I went to the pursuit of truth. So I saw this article on Sky News on their website, and it's talking about staff at a care home not taking the vaccine, and a whole piece making them look out to be bad people for not taking the vaccine. They interview different people, and they all say that. And I understand why people would be concerned about this vaccine, because they don't know the long-term effects of it, especially, like things like childbirth and all that kind of, not childbirth, but fertility, I should say. So I can understand why people would maybe be concerned, Everyone's recently seen the Primodos scandal, where they were told, people were told in the 60s, 70s that this wouldn't do you any harm, and we all found out now that the pharmaceutical companies, the government, I don't know about the doctors, knew about all this. But you would have been told at that time that this was a perfectly safe thing to take. So I can understand why people would have legitimate concerns. But the thing is, what's interesting about this article is that, of course, as they've said many times, they don't believe by taking the vaccine that you can't, that it stops you from transmission. And that's a very important part. It'd be good if the vaccine did stop transmission, because then that would stop you passing it on. But my understanding is that there is no evidence to say that that happens. So therefore you can take the vaccine, and the idea is that, well, depending on who's telling the truth about how effective it is, it will stop you dying from it. It'll stop you getting the bad effects, but it might not stop you getting it, and it might not stop you transmitting it. So of course, to attack these care people and suggest that because they're not taking it, they're somehow putting the elderly people they're looking after at risk, is completely unfounded and untrue, because there's no evidence to prove that. Because you could have the vaccine and they would say, oh, you're very responsible, but you could still transmit it to the elderly person you're looking after. So therefore, by you not having it doesn't mean that you actually increase any kind of risk, unless they can say that the vaccine stops transmission, which they haven't been able to, and most of them say that it doesn't have any effect of that. You can still transmit it, because if that was the case by now, they would have had that evidence, because these vaccines are month old now. They've done a lot of studies on them. So if they know how effective they are, that depends between different studies and different countries, what's the truth on that. So it seems irresponsible. Let me read it out to you. Covid-19. Concerns grow over a number of carers turning down the vaccine, by Lisa Holland, Sky News correspondent. The National Care Association is very concerned about the number of carers taking up the Covid-19 vaccine. One care home in West London told Sky News half of its staff had refused the jab, and called on the government to do more to combat misinformation. Ian Summer owns the Meadows Care Home in Greenford. All but one of his 22 residents had the vaccine when it was offered last weekend, but he's struggling to persuade his staff to follow suit. There are 24 people employed at the home in the roles including caring, cleaning and in the kitchen. He said they're being quite selfish because they don't understand that they're putting people's lives at risk. Well, actually they're not. They come in here on the understanding that they care for the elderly and they have a passion to look after them, and I would bring that into question. See how he's demonising them. And then he goes on to change the contract for new employees. One of the residents at the Meadows care home is 94-year-old Erin Clark. She told us that she feels angry with the staff who are refusing the vaccine. She said not all the staff have been done yet, and I thought they had, but I found out they haven't, and they're putting us all at risk. It isn't a relaxed virus, it's a deadly virus. The care home serves told the frustration that range of reasons given by staff for refusing the virus, none of which are substantial in any way. Don't know why Sky News decided to put that. How do they know whether it's substantial or not? They include causing infertility, being part of a medical experiment, scaremongering by the government, and denying the virus exists. The concerns are shared by the NCA. Nadra Ahmed, chair of the NCA, said, I'm very concerned because it's a real form of tension and anxiety for the provider to know that they will have people in their service who potentially are carrying the virus and could be asymptomatic. Nothing to do with taking the vaccine, because that doesn't change that. Because whether you have the vaccine or not, you can still be asymptomatic and carrying the virus. How ill-informed of you, and yet you're the chair of the NCA. I think it's the main hurdle for us to get over of this, because we know the vaccine is a key that will assist us to migrate the risk, except transmission. And that's me adding that. We're extremely concerned for this sector and for the whole workforce because we want them to understand this is such an important thing to do. The Department of Health and Social Care says 63% of elderly care home residents have received the vaccine. They're on track for 100% by the end of the month. There's currently no evidence as to whether having the vaccine will stop people transmitting the virus. So at least Sky News decided to tell the truth there. Other journalists probably would have left that fact out and made you, because this whole piece is about demonising people who refuse the vaccine, despite there not being any evidence that it will stop transmission. There is no evidence because it doesn't stop transmission. And I suspect eventually we're going to find out that it doesn't actually do anything, or not very much. Because if it only has 33%, helps 33%, that's worse than the flu vaccine. And of course it leaves a lot to be desired, because when you get it, how do you know your immune system isn't killing it? Or are we going to be told? The thing is, we'll see with the numbers. Once everyone over 50 has been vaccinated in the UK, then the numbers of deaths should go down, because aren't they the majority of people who are dying currently? It'd be nice to know, because they've stopped doing it. If the ONS could release of the 1,000 that die every day, what age ranges that all of them are. Because if they're all 50, 60, majority, if not 90 odd % of them are, once all those are vaccinated, the deaths should disappear to a handful. But I suspect it won't. Because if these things are only 33%, and I don't really know how they work out, because the idea is that you could still catch it, but you won't die of it, because how do you know that's working? Because there's lots of people who don't have medical conditions, and they considered healthy, died of this disease. So how do you know if you're given this vaccine in testing procedure, to test it to see how good it was? Normally it would be that you don't catch it at all, and that would be a sign of it working. They give it to you, they put you in the room with someone who's got it, and you don't catch it. And also you can't transmit it. That would be a great vaccine. But this vaccine, you can still catch it, you can still pass it on, but you won't die of it. Well, how do they know you won't die of it? Because the people they tested it on, how do they know, even if they caught it and didn't have the vaccine, that they wouldn't have died in it, unless there's somehow they can take DNA or stuff and work that out? So that's the bit I'm worried about, how really effective this vaccine really is. Is it a bit of a placebo that we're going through? But I don't know. That's the problem. That's just my conjecture, and maybe ill-informed. But we'll see at the end of this all. But the thing is, what I don't like, and I think it's harmful when you're demonising people, when you know full well that by taking the vaccine or not, it doesn't stop transmission. So you're not creating any more risk than the person who has taken it. But you saw how that article was written. And of course, that's the problem. Doing things like that is what makes people question things, and what makes people think there's a conspiracy out there. People working together in a way. The media, the government do the same, because when they get their data of these different vaccines, they will always pick the highest number and say it's 94% effective. And how great that is. And then Israel do a study and they find out it's 33%. And then the doctors, have to say, oh, wow, there's these different studies, and this one said it was 30, this one said it was 50%, this one said it was 60, this one said it was 90, and we went with the 90. Well, why did you go with that top figure? You went with that top figure because you want it to be good. I understand that, but creating those kind of lies, because it is a form of lie, you should have said, well, the tests are, it could be between 30 and 90. Be truthful, be completely honest. Because if you're not, then that makes people who find out these things question whether anything's real. If you want to stop people being having that mindset, tell the whole truth from the very beginning. Don't tell us what we want to hear. Treat us with some respect. That's the problem. And that's the problem with the media, that's the problem with governments. Because they always want people to love them. They want to be popular. And they want to... Well, they want these things to happen, so they always give you the best figure. And that to me is part of the problem. And this piece that I read at Sky News is another example of the problems within the system that we live within. Anyway, it annoyed me to see that, and I'm sure it annoys a lot of people who read it, but it just goes to show how Sky News, I mean, they know, because at the end of the article they said that there's no proof or no evidence that it stops transmission, but they still wrote the bloody article and interviewed those people and you know, because you know when you do an interview, you interview certain people. They might have interviewed 5 or 6 elderly people, and they went with the one that said the things that they wanted, you know. So they knew, you know, they wanted this to be a demonising thing to attack carers. And so therefore to attack all of us, any person who questions whether I should have the vaccine or not, is then put in that same bracket, because if a carer can be demonised, why not the ordinary person who doesn't even, air quotes, care? So yeah, I think that was a mistake. But that's the world we live in, and that's what makes people think all the media and the government are working together. Maybe all these people are, or they're all very stupid, or they just don't consider that truth is such an important thing that you shouldn't tell half truths. You should complete truths. And you know, just because you want to fill up, someone, your editor said I need an article, that doesn't mean you can just throw the truth out the window and say whatever you want, say a load of old lies, and then at the end put a bit of truth in at the end. But that's the world we live in, because of money. Take care, take it easy, God bless and peace.